Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist and partner here at TCS, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. Our guest is Alexandra Whittington, or Alex Whittington. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Alex is a colleague of mine. She's a futurist. She has taught for many years at the University of Houston in their futurist department, and she just brings all kinds of interesting perspectives and research to our discussion here. And the topic we're going to focus on is the future of housing, or the future of the house, or the future of the home, however you want to say it. Again, Alex, thanks for joining us today. Let me just jump in and ask you a personal question. In the vortex of this pandemic, when everything was at its top, tell me how your personal life changed.
Well, one of the things that I actually feel was a great benefit was the ability to work from home and visit, so to speak, other locations outside my city from my home office. I actually feel like it opened up a lot of opportunities for me as a working mom. Traveling is always a challenge, getting my kids all taken care of so that I can leave town for a few days to give a speech or do a workshop. It takes a lot of prep work. So I was able to give a TEDx talk in the UK from my bedroom. So I don't know that I would have been able to really pull that off at any other time in life. So I feel like it actually benefited me. That whole telecommuting magic was a big help.
It certainly levels the playing field, right? So, when people have other obligations and it makes it difficult, well, life was difficult for all of us. And so we were all on that same level playing field. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of benefits for moms, honestly.
So at my house, we spent a lot of time around an outdoor fire pit. A lot of us weren't comfortable packing a living room full of friends for for coffee or a cocktail hour or something. So our neighborhood, it's like we probably emptied Home Depot of all outdoor fire pits, because
Right.
everybody would put them in their driveways or in their backyards. And we would have these big circles outdoors in the wind with a hot fire, doing our best to be able to make an area conducive for socializing, but still in a safe area. We're going to look back at this era as just being a very strange one. So here's another question for you, Alex. Did you in any way change your office to accommodate this, moving your work all online?
For sure. I invested in the light or whatever you call it, the whole tripod. Had to learn Zoom and Teams and everything, the backgrounds, headphones. Yeah, I took a step up. It was a digital transformation for all of us, wasn't it?
Oh man. So we also for vacations or time off, did you guys figure out how to accommodate that?
We did. I tried to find the most remote location I could think of that we could get to by car. So we took a family vacation to West Texas, which, you could be out in West Texas and not see another person for miles. So it was very rejuvenating to be out in nature and, that big Texas sky. You can see the Milky Way out there.
Oh, wow.
So it was a perfect place to visit during the pandemic because there's hardly anyone out there anyway. And you can stay in a place where you're just, all alone basically. So that was a good choice, a good time to go.
We did something very similar. We did one of those vancations. We rented one of those Sprinter vans. I don't think it was a Sprinter model. It was like a Dodge Ram model of the Sprinter van. But,
Right.
With the beds in the kitchen and the sink and all that stuff. And then we did a big, like Idaho, Montana circle. So we figured out a big loop and did it and saw very, very few people.
Yes. Yes.
So a similar model to what you had.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how the pandemic impacted all of us. What do you think are some of those lasting influences on society that we're going to leave this pandemic with?
Well, as I mentioned, working from home, which was an existing trend, it really became accelerated during the pandemic, as we know, with the whole lockdown thing. Those of us who were, I would say, lucky enough to be able to work at home managed to do that. And it became part of the normal. And I think that we can see as this kind of tension has been growing around return to office or not return to office or have a hybrid work schedule or whatever, there's it's opened up a lot of conversation about how people work, at least those of us who work on laptops and kind of do this, what you might call a knowledge worker type job. So I think that it's shifted that conversation, because now that companies have seen, well, people can be productive at home, and they also enjoy the benefits of, reducing their costs of renting offices and providing equipment. I do think that shifted and sort of catalyzed work from home, and then that sort of branches out into work from anywhere. I mean, the RV that you guys were driving around in, and when I was out in West Texas, I mean, depending on your internet stability, you can work from a remote location. You can work from a vacation spot. You can work from a hotel room. So I think that this idea that working from anywhere and also learning from anywhere will become permanent fixtures in the way that we look at employment, work, the way we spend our time and make money. Yeah.
So during the pandemic, you got involved in some research projects on kind of the future of the home. Talk to us about that. Set the right context for us.
Yeah, well, spending so much time in the home, it obviously came to the top of my agenda. And I started thinking about, well, first of all, historical parallels, because during the pandemic of the early 1900s, the one that came about 100 years before COVID, that pandemic actually had some lasting changes on the features in the home, which I learned about, during COVID. Things like radiators being built to, heat up a certain way to kill germs. There was also the rise of these copper doorknobs, which if you go and visit tour historic homes, you might notice they have these copper doorknobs. And that is actually because copper is antibacterial. And so during that time period, they started using copper around the house to, kill germs. So I started thinking about how might this pandemic change the way homes look in the future. And I think one of the features that people became sort of interested in was self-sustainability, right? The ability to grow your own food, perhaps, right? These gardens, a lot of gardening started happening during the pandemic because, well, food shortages, because of a resistance to go out in public and do shopping, the difficulties of getting what you needed. I think that is something that we may see tie into a bigger trend of sustainability, right? It's always more sustainable, more ecologically friendly to grow your own food. So I think that could be a lasting trend. Another thing was, homeschooling. Homeschooling has been around for a while, at least in the US. It's relatively common. It's not the most well-used schooling technique, but it's everywhere. And it has been growing over the past couple of decades. And I think that a lot of parents, and I've read about, accounts where parents say that they just found homeschooling worked better for them. Kids with different needs, kids who have experienced bullying in school. And there's also the fact that schools are systemically unequal. There was an interesting article about a large proportion of African-American parents that discovered homeschooling was giving their kids more equal opportunities in education than the public schools had been. So I think that it raised our sensitivity to things that weren't working well. So homeschooling is an example of one of those things. It can really have positive benefits on kids. So that's another trend that we might see grow further from this pandemic.
Oh, that's fascinating. We have the opportunity here to be mentors in the refugee community here in Boise, Idaho. And some really interesting things. The school started delivering the lunches that the kids would normally get. They delivered them to the homes of the kids around the school. So the kids were still getting the food they would have got at school, but it was being a sack lunch. Also, homes that couldn't afford the internet, here in Boise, they went out and set up internet in all of the homes of the kids that didn't already have it. In addition, the kids were all using these laptops, these like Chromebooks and things like that at school. And the school issued them out and assigned all those Chromebooks from school to the kids that didn't have them at home. So I was really impressed with the way, at least in the neighborhoods that we were involved in, they took what they were offering at school and they actually made sure it could continue. Now, given that took probably 6 weeks of on and off, trying to figure that all out. But it was crazy times, and I was really impressed how the Boise school districts here stepped up to those challenges. Yeah, just fascinating. But we also saw the same thing where you have some kids that are going to thrive in a digital environment, and others have no idea how to sit in front of a screen listening to a teacher for 6 hours.
I think it just raised awareness of the different needs of kids and how maybe education systems can be a little bit more flexible going forward in meeting those individual needs.
No, that's
It's not a one size fits all, right? That's one of the main things we learned about public school is it's not one size fits all. That's how it's designed, but it doesn't really work.
So now let's just jump straight into the topic of the house. How do we think houses themselves going forward? How do you think this experience will influence what we all do with our homes going forward?
Yeah, well, I do think that there might be a trend toward keeping the house cleaner, safer from outside pathogens. And, materials have been developed that are antibacterial. There are technological devices that you can get to purify the air. We all saw the mad rush for air purifiers and the idea that it's a good idea to clean the air in an enclosed space to prevent the spread of disease. So I think that we may see more homes with maybe built-in air purifiers, retrofitting what you already have, or building new homes that naturally purify the air. And not to mention the more organic approaches to that kind of thing, house plants, which were already a big design trend going into 2020. They're just growing in popularity. If you look at interior design magazines, all the popular design styles have tons of plants, greenery, living things that, are not just beautiful, but they're also there to provide a cleaner, safer, healthier environment. So I think all sorts of tools that help us keep a healthier home will be important. And I would add to that, as you probably know, the rise of Peloton, right? These in-home exercise systems. There's not just the Peloton, but there's like the video. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a video screen that you stand in front of where you get this personalized exercise routine, sort of like having a trainer.
We have a whole variety of those mirrors.
Yeah, those big mirrors, and it's sort of like a personal trainer, and they kind of give you personalized feedback on what you're doing, and you get all your stats and try to challenge yourself. I think those will be increasingly popular. People are going back to the gym now, but I think that, there is a convenience factor to it that, a lot of people will want to retain. On a related note, the whole concept of ordering online and picking up in store, in terms of how we supply our homes and to get the stuff that we need, that's taken a huge leap. And now that many, many people are familiar with how that works, I think that we're going to, stay with that. A lot of people like the convenience. They like the advantages. You can just order stuff and then go pick it up. You don't spend a lot of time in the stores anymore. It's led to this trend. I thought this was an interesting name. They call them dark stores. Dark stores. So that's a space that would typically be in a retail area, but it's a store that no one goes to. All it does is deliver and allow people to pick up stuff, whether it's food or household goods or whatever. So some cities are kind of dealing with this different sort of real estate proposition for the dark store. It's not a warehouse, but people don't actually go in it to shop. It's just staffed with people who stock and then deliver or prepare the orders for pickup.
It sounds like the ghost kitchens as well, where restaurants don't have a front end. It's just a delivery system. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's another good trend to kind of link to the home, rather than going out to eat, bringing that food into your home that you would enjoy in a restaurant. And you never know, maybe people will want to make their homes more restaurant-like if they're enjoying a lot of, takeout food, especially with our busy schedules, working from home. It's, we've certainly seen the rise of these delivery systems ranging from, DoorDash to Uber Eats and all the restaurants themselves sort of figuring out some way to send their food out rather than receive customers.
That's interesting. Going back to the topic of exercise, here in Boise, we have, foothills all around us, and it's just a beautiful asset that the city has here to be able to go out in nature. But the trail systems, we have a 900-foot mountain right behind us called Table Rock. The trails became so packed as every gym closed their doors and everybody moved to the trail systems. And it got to a point where we had to pick and choose the time of day and where we're going, unless we would end up in a crowd of people, which is exactly what we weren't wanting to do. Oh, it's too funny. We have these trail etiquettes where everybody steps off the trail 6 feet. Anyway, it was just an interesting life. So how are we approaching, how might our idea of entertainment and just life with a family in a home, given our pandemic experience, how do you think that might change the home of the future?
Well, obviously, we are looking at a huge wave of advanced technology devices and systems that can entertain us. And one in particular that has caught my attention is something called brain computer interface. And that is, a lot of people have heard of Neuralink, which is one of the Elon Musk experiments, where it's literally a chip implanted in the brain that allows the user to communicate, you might say, telepathically with various devices. And so I think that this might have a place in the future of our home systems, entertainment systems, or functional systems, in the sense that the idea is that you can, turn on lights, change your temperature in your house, receive a message from your refrigerator that you're out of milk or something like that. The convenience factor is certainly interesting. And then there are other things like Valve, which is a big video game maker. Valve is experimenting with a chip that allows you to control your video game with your mind. So things like that, where we can be entertained or be convenienced using some sort of brain-computer interface, could be an interesting asset in the home.
If we decide those are useful as a society, I hope they figure out a non-surgical way of making that happen. Give me a headband or something. I don't want chips in my brain.
And that's what I was just going to say there, that you can wear. It's a headband, typically. There's also some that come in an earbud format. And those are usually for, they kind of tap into your brain waves to help you get to sleep, to help you relax, meditate. The earbuds that I mentioned, those are specifically for detecting physical signals that you're under stress or anxiety. So they can literally tell you, okay, it's time to close your laptop and take a break, or you're stressed out, why don't you exercise? So it's reading your body and monitoring signals that supposedly say you've had too much or, whatever. So there's even a headband or some device that can permit you to lucid dream, right? You can sort of control your dreams at night. So there are, ranging from health to sort of, I guess you would say, leisure and entertainment type applications of these technologies. Internal is the chip, but externally there are headbands and other sort of devices that go, wearables, I guess you would call them, to tap into brain waves and sort of experience a different level of consciousness, you might say, thanks to technology. And clearly these are things we'll do in the home.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things is I've worked mostly out of my home for the last 20 years in a remote office, being here in Boise and kind of traveling the globe from here. But one of the things I really noticed that I think TCS, where we work here, did a really good job. They started really showing a lot of empathy for their people at home. They would, it's every day they would be reminding you to get up and stretch, to rest your eyes. It was every day these series of things that you can do to keep your health up. They offered online concerts, online yoga sessions. They set it up where we could have phone calls from home with any health people if we had concerns or if we had COVID or anything else. They had all these different links and phone numbers and live chats with medical personnel that could take care of all of us and really invested in our health at home. And they went beyond just their employees. They were sending out information on activities for kids and all kinds of things because they recognize that, again, the distance between your work and your home has been blurred. It's all merged together. So how can you just keep a resilient employee that can be in good health and put up with these challenging times? So good job, TCS, for the work you did there. I felt like they really cared, which is important. It wasn't just, a financial investment thing. They were really reaching out and saying, here's all the tools for families and our workers, and trying to make sure everything was taken care of. So let's talk about home design, architecture, interior design, that kind of thing. How do you think if we start with a brand new home, how do you think that might change given our pandemic experiences?
I think that's a really interesting thing to look into. And from what I've been thinking about is this sort of, you just alluded to the stress factor, the wellness, the humane issues around experiencing this historic time. And I think that going forward, we will be looking for materials, design elements, whatever atmospheric impacts we can build into our homes that will contribute to feeling less stressed, right? We've all experienced something quite traumatic, on varying levels. So something I'm really interested in is it's a trend that I call biophilia. You can read about something called biophilic design. It's an ongoing trend in the architecture and design area. But what biophilia means is love of nature. And biophilic means, nature centric. And I actually conducted an interview with a biophilic design architect during the pandemic who told me about these design elements that are drawn from nature, things like fractals, right? This is a shape that occurs in nature. He explained it to me as something that you see if you look at in a flame. The pattern of the flames literally takes on this fractal shape. Plants can have a fractal shape. Waves have a fractal shape. And it's also in the grains of wood, right? It's a naturally occurring pattern that psychologists have discovered literally brings calmness to people when they see it. So that's why we like sitting around the fire. That's why we like the ocean and the waves. That's why we enjoy the beauty of a flower, right? So this idea of introducing biophilic design into the home could be sort of a remedy to something we've all been through that is leaving a lot of people either on edge or mentally at risk or physically disabled or some other thing that, why not introduce a level of calmness, relaxation, and pleasantry really into your life. And he talked to me about, furniture that can be designed to show the wood, right? The wood grain. Just literally having that in a room has been proven to help people feel less stressed. So I think that the design elements drawing on nature, the biophilic design, might be something that new homes will be designed to have.
That's fascinating. I know in my own home, we ended up almost creating stations all around our house. This is the sewing and quilting station. Over here is the stationary bike station. We have puzzles on this other station over here. It was like, so all around the room, you're trying to give your house more function and like create a variety of things. So it's not just one room where you sit. It's all these stations around because you're not going to leave. And this way you can rotate amongst stations and kind of keep up the variation. Now, another thing, we already talked about schooling and some of the things that happened then. I read your research on houses, and you also brought up a section where you were talking about unschooling as a philosophy or concept. Why don't you share that with us, Alex?
Yeah, well, unschooling has been around again for quite some time, quite a few decades. And this is a concept that is often used in homeschooling, but not always. And I've actually seen it used in a physical school setting as well. But the idea is allowing children and students of all ages to pick what they learn rather than have some pre-written curriculum, right? That is very standardized, very, let's face it, oriented around some kind of big test. Letting kids choose what they want to learn. To me, it kind of reminds me of the Montessori approach to preschool. Montessori teachers invite children to discover what interests them at the time, right? If the class says, today, let's learn about bugs. Okay, they go outside and look for some bugs and learn about the different bugs they see, draw the bugs, right? This would be sort of extending that idea to students of all ages to say, okay, what is it that you would like to learn? Let's learn about that. And letting children, primarily children, but older students, design their own learning process with teachers' guidance, with a parent's guidance, whoever, adult supervises. But it's a very student-led form of education. And I think that we're seeing the decentralization of all sorts of things, work, governments, financial systems. Why not decentralize education and give children more of a say in what interests them? And I actually think it meshes very well with the characteristics we see in Gen Z and younger, because they're already exposed to so much stuff. They're on their iPhones and iPads. They're in the metaverse. They know a lot. They have access to a ton of information. So learning isn't really about accessing information anymore. It's more about what you do with it, right? They have at their fingertips tons of information. Why not let them use that to apply it to different problems, to different issues, to things that they're passionate about, and really see where it takes them? I think that would be a great direction for education.
Oh, that's fascinating. Our son is learning to fly a plane. So he's working on his pilot license. And the first day, before he's even cracked a book, they just walk out to the plane, walk around it, get in it, and fly. Mm-hmm. First day. And I thought that was such an interesting concept. And I think it's similar line as to this unschooling, is find it interesting, go out and learn it by doing it. And then you can come back and put context to everything you might see in your studies. But I thought that was an interesting, let's just do it first, and then we'll put context to it later. Or, the content on how to later. Fascinating here. You also write in your research here a lot about co-living and co-working spaces. What do you learn about that?
Well, those are two trends that seem to be taking off right now. A lot of us have heard of WeWork, right? This is a company that provides communal working spaces to various freelancers or remote workers. They were doing this well before the pandemic. But communal living and working seem to be offshoots of that greater decentralization trend that I mentioned. Even though people aren't necessarily going into an office, they still crave human interaction sometimes. So the ability to work from anywhere seems to be leading to these spaces where you can go work. It's not a Starbucks, right? It's not a diner. It's not a hotel room, but a place where you'll run into other people who are working. And similarly, the co-living is one of those home design trends where homes and communities are being designed to give to a more group-like setting. You might just compare it to a college dormitory, because they have shared kitchens, shared restrooms. I've seen a community where they have sort of a shared yard. So instead of everyone having their own private backyard, you walk out into a shared green space. It's everyone's backyard. So you have your own house, but you share the outdoor areas. And I think this goes with this sort of decentralization, or really just shifting patterns in family. Because let's face it, in the US and a lot of other Western countries, people are having fewer children. So the way that they live is not necessarily dictated by a family structure like the nuclear family. You might have roommates, you might live with extended family members, you might live with people you work with. And that's something that I get at in one of those scenarios in the report. This idea that the future might be communal living and working spaces sponsored by our employer, where we live together with the people that we work with, and sort of have a communal experience that's both life and work. Some people don't love that scenario, but I find it quite interesting. And if you look around at society, you'll see an example of this through something that people call TikTok houses or content houses. These are brand sponsored living spaces where these influencers live together with the sole purpose of creating digital content, right? It's their job. They get paid. They get paid to live there. They get, all the equipment that they need. So I wonder if that's sort of an early model for what work might be like in the future.
Interesting. And as housing and rent costs go up in kind of prime areas that the young might want to live, I think you'll see even more of that. Matter of fact, that's very close to home with us. Our daughter is a travel nurse, and she just was living in a big house with everybody rented their rooms, but shared the kitchen and the living room and the yard. All of that was shared. And so that there was, I think, 6 different people all in the same house in different wings of this old house. And it was a good situation for her because she wasn't paying $5,000 a month in Palo Alto, costs. It was a shared environment where they all could afford it, and you could socialize when you wanted to, or just go in your room and stay away from everybody if you wanted to do that. So that's something we experienced. That's exactly co-living environment. Great. So final question here, Alex. Let's say that you walk up and you're looking to buy a home, and you buy an older home that's going to need to be totally remodeled. Given our experiences here in the pandemic, what might be some of the first areas you personally would look to change about an older home to make it better accommodate what we've learned here during the pandemic years?
Well, I'm a futurist, so you have to know I'm not going anywhere near an old home. I want something new and modern. No, but if I were in that position, I would definitely think that self-sustaining element that we talked about, maybe being able to generate your own electricity, collect your rainwater and somehow recycle it through your home, places to grow food indoors and outdoors, ventilation, right? We want to breathe clean air. It's not just COVID, but there's a lot of places, even here in Texas, we've had wildfires lately, the smoke pollution like the people have endured in California with those wildfires. So to protect us from stuff like that. If I were still in Houston, I would want some safeguard against the rising coastline and these constant floods that we're experiencing. So I would say, something, whether it's insurance or actual physical buildups to protect you from climate change. I mean, this is something very real that we have to face. And in addition to that, I would definitely want to build in the biophilic design, right? Stuff that you walk in a room and you can feel calmer, you feel more relaxed, help you through tough times in life. I think that would be a nice touch.
Alex, that sounds like a beautiful vision. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.